Introducing Lindsay and Margaret Harmer, who were the founders of Compassionate Friends in Victoria, and it spread around Australia. What did you want this organisation to come to Australia? Why did you want this organisation to come?
Well, it's very important for a grieving family to have skilled support, understanding support, and tender, loving care. And for the family to understand what's happening to them when a little boy is killed on the road by a tragic accident. And the mum and dad come home and they're confused, they're bewildered, and they're frequently disorientated because of the situation of grief. And they don't understand very much. Dad gets up and tries to go to work, and he finds he comes home exhausted. And mum's not too friendly when she comes home. And it's a very difficult, painful, horrific time for the mum and the dad. Right?
And we knew that over the 4 years before we started Compassionate Friends that there was no help for bereaved parents. I worked for Lifeline at the time, and I had many calls from bereaved parents, but there was nowhere I could refer them to, or I couldn't even make friends myself due to the anonymity of Lifeline. And when we eventually saw a little advertisement or a little article in the Herald about Compassionate Friends in America, we immediately looked at each other and thought, that's exactly what we want, that's what we need here.
We needed here
yes.
people who understood what we were going through. Yeah. And it appeared that the only people who would understand a road trauma or any other kind of difficult death of a child, we would need to meet up with a person that's had a similar experience. So we just worked out together, it would be a wonderful idea if we could bring together, particularly fathers, because I was a father and I have certain talents and certain skills, but not to hugging and loving and being compassionate and understanding. I tend to settle my anger with withdrawing from people. So I found it a very, very difficult time, but most of all, a difficult time in which there wasn't anyone there to help us.
How did you start TCF in Australia?
Well, that was very exciting, really. I know it sounds a silly thing to say exciting, but when we did make up our mind this particular night that we would start it, I went into the Herald the very next morning and spoke to a journalist, and she said she was very enthusiastic, but she said, you have to start it first and then I'll do a big article about it. So we put a little ad in the local paper, and we had 7 bereaved parents that came to our lounge room, and they came for a couple of months, and then at that stage we spoke to the journalist again, and she did a whole page article on bereaved parents, and that just opened the floodgates. It was like turning the tap on. And we had a big meeting then following that in our home, where our lounge room, and we had a marquee, it was all just packed. And we really knew that we had hit on a nerve that was really aching for everybody there. So that's how it actually started. And from then on, with that big group, we then moved into the city and had our monthly meeting in the city. But all the paperwork and phone calls and everything were done in our home. And it was during about 6 months later that we invited Simon Stevens, the world founder, to come to Australia, and he and I and Lindsay, we had him booked up every second, going to all sorts of groups like funeral directors, doctors and medical, clerical, church groups, everything you can think of, poor man. We had him occupied all the time. We also travelled interstate, and we were on the midday show with Mark Walsh, and that made a huge impact. And so that's really how it started.
Yes, we were getting from the paper stories where we told our story, a tremendous response from people who were also going through parental grief, and we wrote letters to them, and we realised they needed more. They needed booklets and information and a group. where they could get to meet other friends and similar experiences and carry on. And this is what we aim to do, not only in Victoria, but we were getting letters from all around Australia. And we thought, well, we've got to somehow bring Simon out, pay for him to come, and then circulating round Australia. And we were able to do that with the idea of establishing a chapter in every capital city, like we were doing in Victoria, and then they would conduct their own chapters in their particular state. And this happened. So we became a collective of states and territories. We got chapters going in all the cities. Melbourne, we were there, and Sydney had theirs. Brisbane had lovely people. Perth had lovely people.
Adelaide.
And Adelaide, a bit sleepy, but they got there and they did a good job as well. Yeah, we had difficulties. We had to form a committee and try and understand what you do in a committee. We had to learn to facilitate a group of bereaved parents and get them so they all had a chance to talk. Yeah, it was a learning experience for us, but we coped.
And we had it at home, so our home was full of, it was
Stuff.
like having Lifeline at home, because,
Stuff.
and it was full of, yes, papers, material, everything. Letters. We were flat out.
Taping machines.
We even had
for
bereaved
tapes.
parents that would come at 8 in the morning.
Christmas Day.
And during our Christmas dinner they would ring. We never were free of it for a minute. But at the end of about 1981, we were given a grant from the health department, and we were able to move into our own bereaved parent centre, which was in Sindel, and it was the first drop-in bereaved parent centre in the world. The Americans had a wonderful big office, but ours was the first in the world where we were open to everyone. Anyone could come anytime, just drop in, have a cup of tea, take books, take literature, talk, and that was the start of our bereaved parents centre in Sindel, which we had for 13 years.
As we progressed, we did find that the government, the Victorian government, was very fussy that we weren't spending any of their grant from the health department interstate. So we had to kind of do limited work for the interstate chapters to get going, apart from advising, and we were able to develop the chapter in Melbourne, which became the Melbourne chapter, and that was open to all and any, but the money that we got from the health department had to be used in Victoria. And it still applies, I should imagine.
So it was. I will say that our little bereaved parent centre was very successful, if you know what I mean, in that way that people did come, and we also had the idea of realising that people needed their own group. We had the idea of having subgroups of bereaved parents because we realised not all bereaved parents did have the same experiences, and so we had one for those that had suicided, those that had been in road accidents, ones who'd suffered illnesses of their children, those that had their children murdered, and babies that had died, and all these things. When they gathered together, of course, there was an instant rapport, and we were able to let them stay and talk as long as they wanted. They had food and cups of tea, and they met every month, each of those. But as well as that, we had one big central meeting in the centre of the city, in a big hall where people could come in the evening with husbands most times, and they would come to the big hall, and we would have a guest speaker there, maybe a professional person who was acceptable to the bereaved parents, who they didn't mind having, because sometimes they didn't want to have professional talks. But we had kind, caring people who spoke to them and stayed afterwards and talked to them. And so all throughout our 13 years of having the centre, we also had the big central meeting in the city, and that attracted about, I suppose, 60 people or so each time. And every Christmas we had a huge one, which would be about 150, where we had candles, their children's photographs, lovely singers. We gave them a really beautiful Christmas, not not meaning to make them too sad, but to give them a bit of uplift for the difficult time that Christmas is.
One of the things I think that people who are non-bereaved and don't understand bereaved parents, and who think we might be a collection of people crying their eyes out, when we get together as bereaved parents, we're quite strong, we crack jokes, and people often wonder, well, why aren't they kind of crying all the time? So we didn't treat Christmas like we would when our children were alive. We realised all we wanted was a candle and a photograph, a time to be quiet, and maybe to use a clergyman who did understand the need to grieving. So the subgroups were really a way of getting into the traumatic death of our child. Not all children die peaceably and sweetly. Some are violently killed by road accidents or many farm machinery, etc., etc. And we had to bring into the group the realisation that people were affected, as I was, by the traumatic death of my little 11-year-old boy on the road, waiting an hour for an ambulance to come, being arrived dead on arrival at the hospital, being left in the ambulance and sent to the morgue. And we just told, look, we're finished with you now, you go home. Okay, sounds all right, but it isn't, it's inhuman. And we had to try and tackle a society and live in it. And that's where we needed the support of fellow bereaved parents. And that's why we did subgroups. The subgroups were there to help people understand the trauma that goes with that type of death. And that's absolutely essential if you're ever going to sleep at night, because you relive that traumatic death of the child over and over and over again. And professionals don't know what to do. They don't know how to solve this. We tried a few pros, and they were absolutely more dangerous than useful. We had to develop our own bereaved parents. And that's why we brought the bereaved parents together in committees, subcommittees, groups. And since I left in 1981 or 19 something or other, 13 years ago, it's grown and developed training for bereaved parents. That sounds a terrible word. But we had to get skilled bereaved parents to help other bereaved parents. Otherwise, you could get a bit of damage done sometimes. And we developed our own way of doing things that continues to be their own way. They now have an organisation or a subcommittee that awards firms that look after the bereaved who go to work. And they award presents for them and certificates. And they're spreading the word that way. And we have two of our own bereaved parents who got into the death by suicide and run the suicide group. So it expands according to the trauma. And then we all get in together knowing we're bereaved parents, and that happens at Christmas. So it's a fellowship, a very serious, beneficial fellowship of bereaved parents. It's a very
wonderful experience to see all the bereaved parents relating to each other, loving each other, hugging each other. I mean, there are tears. Lindsay said there's laughter as well, of course, but there are tears whenever tears are necessary, and no one feels awkward or difficult with that. We're all very close. There seems to be an innate bond between bereaved parents, the young and the old, and all mixed up types of people. They're not all exactly the same.
I know I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high of vales of hills, when all at once at Flinders I saw a man in a Jaguar, and I saw his car, and I said, I'll go over and talk to that man, I like his car. And when I got over there, I said, I like your car, mate. And he said, oh, I'm not too happy, my son was killed in it. I said, are you a bereaved parent? He said, yeah. I said, so am I, shake. And we were at the Flinders tip talking for, I'd say, a solid 2 hours. That was just before we started the Compassionate Friends. Bereaved parents need bereaved parents. They need to be heard. They need to be listened to. They need to be understood and helped a lot more than we were getting way back in 1973. It has improved a little bit, but we still need to know that people understand a little bit about the enormous pain and trauma for living on.
Yes, I think it was from our own need that Compassionate Friends started, because after Reece was killed, not a I mean, we had our lovely friends who tried very hard with us, but we had nobody professional, apart from the police, who ever came to see what's happened to our family.
We had one person.
Where are you?
We had Sister Riley.
Yes, we did.
I was in pharmacy at that time, and we traded with the
Corpus Christi
in Glen Waverley, and the sisters and the brothers there.
Yes, they came.
Were absolutely beautiful to us.
They were beautiful.
And
we didn't
Riley,
even know them before, but they came into our lives and gave us enormous comfort.
Do you think the connection that remains today, the strength of Compassionate Friends, is the communication together with other bereaved parents?
The link?
Yeah, the strength,
bond.
Yeah, the bond.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
I hope it does. I mean, it always has before. And we were fortunate enough over the years to go to the conferences in America. They have huge conferences of about 1,500 to 2,000, something like that, a whole hotel full of people. And the warmth and love there among all those people was just something, it's so inspirational and so incredible for us, because we were in a foreign country where we knew nobody, and yet everybody loved us and talked to us, and when we went home they wrote to us and sent us books and material. I can't tell you, there is a bond, and it exists all over the world, from a bereaved parent to another bereaved parent for some wonderful reason. It just is there.
Do you think that the family, friends and the general community understand the grief of parents who
I
have
don't
lost
think
a child?
Look, they do try, and we had many caring friends who did their very best for us and family, but nobody can know the desperate pain that goes on 24 hours a day after a child dies. They try so hard, and they do what they can, but they go home to their own lives, and that's right, they should, and they go back to their own families, and life continues with them. But with us, with bereaved parents, the pain is so intense all day and night for so long that it's very hard for them to cope with, and after a while they really find you probably a bit difficult, and they don't always include you in things, because having bereaved parents at their dinner party becomes a bit of a downer, because people are awkward and don't quite, they'd rather be happy, and so somehow you become a bit removed, and you feel removed, and you feel as if you've got a sign on your head saying, my child is dead. Other people's children are alive, but my child is dead. And it's a very self-conscious feeling you have.
One of the things that I noticed in the phones at the Compassionate Friends in Glen Waverley, Sindel, was that the first major battle that the bereaved brother or sister or father had was with a fellow member of their own family. A battle because the auntie or the sister or the relative felt that, come on, I want you back to what you used to be. Can't you get over it quickly for me and stop talking about it all the time? So there was definitely a battle with me, with that lady on the phone, that member of the family, to say, hey, just a minute, can't you just listen to your bereaved person and listen and understand what they're going through? And that was a very difficult battle. You'd never won that one. They just refused to do it.
That's not our own family you're speaking about. It's the family of other people that used to ring and complain and say, why isn't my sister getting better? You know, what are you doing at Compassionate Friends? Why is she still upset? They didn't really understand. They just want you back where you were before, the happy, successful person you were before, and they don't like to see you so miserable for so long.
I wouldn't try and soften that telephone call I had. The aunties in particular, another senior member of the family, they were very difficult to the bereaved. They really fought hard that we were the wrong group for them to be going to. Why don't you leave them alone and let them get on with their life instead of rehashing it all the time? This is a real issue with the non-bereaved and the bereaved. The bereaved want to talk about it. They need to talk about it. They need to go over their memory over and over and over again to let it go, not to keep it, to let it go. Otherwise it becomes a suppressed trauma, suppressed anger, and an illness will develop, a psychosomatic illness will develop. So you've got to have the freedom to talk, and the person they talk to cannot be a person that will judge them or criticise them or stop them from doing it. You need someone who says yes, someone who will validate what they're going through at that particular time.
But the wonderful thing is that over the years, as you see your bereaved parents develop, there's a wonderful resilience of the human spirit that it's quite a miracle to watch when you see some bereaved parents come in so broken and so completely almost finished with their lives, and you suddenly see the joy come back and the laughter come back and the pleasure in their other children, and it's a most wonderful and beautiful thing to do. And at that stage a lot of them then move on, and that's the way it should be. We don't really want people to stay forever. We want them to stay until they feel that they are ready to lead a normal life again. Some of them will then come back and help bereaved parents in compassionate friends, but it's not a good idea to stay too long in that environment. We think they need to move into the blue sky again.
What do you think the future is for TCF around the globe?
Expanding.
Yes.
Expanding. Needed severely. I mean, you see films where little kids are homeless and they're being shot at and killed. Oh, it's needed in every country. And I think it will. I mean, you've only got to watch a film with the poor little kids in the Middle Eastern countries, and they're running around streets, no houses, no food, no nothing. Our boat people that we condemn so badly, let's trace their history and see what they've been through before we turn the boats back. Let's have a compassion and reach out to them and bring them into our big lovely country. And little kids need our support, as do the parents. Yeah.
And when you're talking about compassionate friends throughout the world, I can truthfully tell you that it is expanding throughout the world, because at the American conferences, people came from all around the world and they were setting up groups. There were big groups in Europe, in South America, of course hundreds of them in America and Canada, and England of course is very big. I'm not sure about Asia. I don't know whether Asian people have them. I couldn't tell you, they probably do. But it certainly is needed in every country, and when it is found to be there, people will come. It seems to be like a magnet to them, because all bereaved parents need someone, each one needs someone to talk to just like them. Yeah.
What role do you see TCF has in developing a better understanding of grief within the community?
They can be the teachers, they can tell their story in newspapers. It's happening now. Look at the football team in Adelaide. They're telling a story. They're getting together both sides and they're hugging each other, men hugging each other in public. Oh, good. That's fantastic. We're learning.
It's happened yes, it's just amazing how it's expanded. In our day it was all hush-hush and nothing done. But as Lindsay said, the Adelaide coach, the dear little Jewel Ma that was murdered, the cricketer Hughes, all these people have all brought in huge grief sessions for men.
And trauma.
And they cry and they share and they make a great thing, I don't mean thing, I mean a great understanding of it, which was never present before. So I think things are, when you asked did you ask me how things have been known about compassionate friends, I think it's absolutely essential to have a lot of publicity about it. I think you find most bereaved parents, or a lot of them anyway, are very happy to tell their own story. They like to talk about their child and how their child has died, and they often are very happy to be featured in a magazine or a newspaper on TV and talk. Once they've talked about their child, they then bring compassionate friends in, and that brings in a huge flood. Every time that happens, there's a huge influx of new bereaved parents, and that's what it's meant for.
many professionals don't see it as mutual support as being of a high priority. What can we do to change the perception?
Well, we're doing it. We're talking trauma. Grief is not only grief. They're not old people that are dying peaceably in their home in an armchair. Kids are killed, and that's a horrible word. Some die in a hospital, and the parents have got a wonderful opportunity to say goodbye, as painful as that might be and as complicated as that might be. At least they've done everything they can possibly do. But when you're caught in a road crash, as I was, nothing works out. An hour for an ambulance to come. The trauma sinks right into your mind and destroys your heart. And it becomes going home and they're all saying, well, what did you do wrong, Liddy? And then you go through the court case and it's always pathetic. The drinking driver is very protected and gets off scot-free, and that's another wound you've got to carry. It's pretty tough stuff, the way trauma is involved in grief, and we've got to deal with it. We've got to debrief the bereaved parents if and when they want to talk about it. What we don't do is when they want to talk about it, shut them up and say, as the professional said to me, oh no, look, we don't want you to talk about it, Mr. Harmer. It might be too painful for you.
Yes, he really did say that. He really did say that.
And he gets a bill for $200 as you walk out.
He really did say that.
We're in groups, and the facilitator knows if a person wants to talk in a group, he's allowed to. And if he cries, you give him a box of Kleenex and say use them. But he's allowed to. He needs to get his sharing out into the room. And as he shares, what is the benefit for that parent? He learns where he is and what he can do about it. He tells his story.
Yes, telling his story. And we have had two different kinds of deaths in our family. We've had our beautiful little 11-year-old boy killed on the road by a speeding drinking driver. And we've had our beautiful daughter, adult daughter, died just last year of cancer. There's been a very big difference in both. It was shock, horror and absolute trauma with our son. With our daughter, it's been sad for quite a few years. We've seen it happening, we've seen it going with the chemotherapy and with her family loving her. And that's been a different experience completely. Just as painful, but different. And at the moment we have our beautiful grandchildren that we're trying to help, and they're in deep grief. I think really there's a need for a group for people, young adults who've lost a mother, as well as for bereaved parents that have lost a child. And so there are many different groups. There are those with suicide children that probably feel guilt that they couldn't see what was going to happen. Babies, when everyone else has got a baby and theirs is dead. The world is so full of different feelings and different griefs, and it's very, very hard to deal with all of them when you're running a centre. You go from one agony to another agony. But as I said, I honestly am amazed. I still meet up with some of our dearest bereaved parents that we had in the 80s, and to see their lives developing on with their other children and grandchildren, and their recovery is truly amazing and wonderful, and one of the miracles of the world, I'd say.
I would include there that it's not too fun to be a father and growing old. The first thing, and have an illness that kind of gives you the wobbles. The first thing the police do and the doctors tell you is to give up your licence. Go to live in a retirement village. Sounds great, but gee whiz, when you give up your own home that you've lived in for years and years, it's not much fun. It is very, very pleasant for me as a father to see what's happening in Adelaide today at the death of the coach, shot by his own son. Now that is the most traumatic death you can possibly think of for that family, for the friends, for the footballers, for the men. And they're getting together after a match and before a match, and they're hugging one another. The one team, another team, it doesn't matter about the colour of the jumper. This is a fantastic revelation for the community of Australia. Photograph that event and show it everywhere. That is the aim of Compassionate Friends, to bring men in and get them to understand their feelings, to talk about their feelings. I feel absolutely buggered today, Mum. What am I going to do about it? Have a rest, have a sleep and see how you feel in the morning. That getting up in the morning even now is a real problem, to get the energy to do it. Okay, I'm 86, but that doesn't matter. I thought life at 86 would be a lot more pleasant. But one of the plus factors of getting together and grieving is you talk about it. Fit young men in a football ground in public, talking and showing that they love one another, they care for each other, they're suffering. And did you notice how Essendon got thrashed on that day? Essendon, the team with all the problems of injections and things, those players weren't ready to play. You can't get over grief in 1 week. They might need a whole season before they come good. So yeah, what we're doing is leading the way. There's no doubt about it. We're getting together, men getting together and hugging one another. I know women are natural leaders of grief. They talk to one another, they ring one another up on anniversaries, they're always aware of each other and they spend time with each other. Men only do what's practical. They'll light the barbecue or they'll shake hands at a funeral and they'll go. They won't sit and hug. I'm hugging all our family. Our little kids now get a big hug. The grandchildren get a big hug. And the Adelaide footballers are having a big hug. God bless them.
Cool. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about?
No, I think it's been really successful.
You've got a good question there about what do you think needs to be done. Does it need? Will it hang around in the future? I want to give a compliment to the group.
Oh, okay. What do you think about grief today and how the community deals with
that
grief?
one. And what's the next one? Something about how the chapter maybe could change, and does it do?
Has anything changed since 1969? If so, what? If not,
that's what he was just saying with the.
I think the Compassionate Friends chapters, particularly the one in Melbourne, has changed. It does it naturally. It's brought in the awards for the firms that look after the bereaved who are going to work, and it's brought in education and teaching for the people who are going to volunteer. Both of those things are absolutely essential, and they've brought them in since my day. I had no idea how to train anybody. I said, oh, they'll just come in and do it. But that isn't that easy. We need skilled programs for the bereaved parents who want to volunteer to work in the office of the Compassionate Friends. And they're getting it now, thanks to the present day chapter. And not every life in the long term turns out happy and sweet and nice. Now, I think the traumatic death of a child at any age, you don't really ever get over the wounds.
No, you don't get over
the wounds that flow, and men have enormous difficulty handling grief. That's why we're so pleased to see the footballers, the cricketers, and the little child that was killed by his father with a bat, where the public get into it and learn what this grief is all about, and they support the children and the parents. And that's fantastic. Yeah, that's what Compassionate Friends
It's very, very good to see that happening, that people can share that and talk about it. And that makes it easier for the next bereaved parent to come along.
Was there anything else that either of you wanted to add?
No, I think we've been very privileged to have had, it's been ghastly, a lot of it. I'm not saying we enjoyed it. It was stressful, it was hard work, and it was awful in many ways. But through it, there's such a feeling of warmth and love and satisfaction. And we've been married 62 years.
And survived.
Survived somehow. We had our marital difficulties like everyone else does. It's all just too hard, the whole thing. But somehow, when you've got through it, you're just so grateful. And even though things are difficult in your old age, we're lucky to be old, I guess. We're very lucky to be old.
No, it's not much fun.
Thank you so much, Lindsay and Margaret.
Thank you for having us.
That's great.